Greetings, friends, family, and survivors. Well, a little disappointing news today. Oh, something's wrong with the furnace. We've only used it a few times, but it's acting up and giving us trouble. We don't use it very often, just kind of in the spring and fall. But I came out today and discovered we had a whole bunch of rain, which is weird to ever have rain this time of year. So we went from 5 below and in the teens during the day. Then it warmed up and rained a couple of inches, and then it snowed 5 inches or so. Then it warmed up, and then it froze hard, and then it warmed up. And I guess we're going to be 11 degrees tonight. And we've got some buckling siding. And we've used this 1x12 pine for 30 years and never had it do this before. So it's going to be interesting to figure out what happened. This side hasn't buckled, but the eave overhang is so short, evidently, even though we've got a whole bunch of paint on this wall, that and association with freezing hard, you can see what happened. Buckled that board way out, and then it's got a kind of a wave going right here, and then split this board. And buckled those way out. So over there on the other side, it's not a real dry climate on the other side of the Cascades. So you're able to dry the lumber, and it gets down around 12, 13% moisture content. And you're able to fit the boards tightly and put bats over them, and you don't even need to paint it, and it won't do this. But over here, evidently, when I put the boards up, it was much drier than it gets over there. It was probably down around 6%. And so when we fit the boards tight, and then they swelled up with the rain, you could see what happened. So that and the freezing, that's a factor I hadn't thought of. And then, of course, I knew that the eave overhang was very inadequate, but this gets another roof coming off this way. And the eave overhangs on the finished buildings, we've got 18 inches. And so you see the end walls haven't had any buckling at all. They have a sufficient overhang. So I'm going to have to try to figure out how to do this differently. This wall is starting to buckle a little bit in a few places, and it's because obviously the overhang isn't sufficient. So I'll have to do something different over here. It's been challenging, and these sliding doors, when we put them in, you could slide them with one finger and drop the pins in the concrete. And we painted them up good, and they were great until the weather, when the rain came with the freezing. Even though all of these joints were glued, you see how much that's separated. That was glued and screwed. The tangential shrinkage, or excuse me, the tangential expansion is 1 3/8 inches. So in order for a board to come off the wall 6-7 inches like that, each board would have to have grown at least 1/4 inch. It had to have in order to pop it off that far. And that's a tremendous amount of force. So I'm assuming the lumber was drier than we're normally working with it. So what we'll have to do is pull all of the boards off and put probably at least 1.5 inch gap in between the boards, and then put a wider bat. And our plan was to get bats on this, but I didn't have them. And we were going to paint the bats. And if I had done that, likely water wouldn't have traveled in between and soaked the boards. But we didn't get it done. So we get to do it again. I think that's been said. We do it right because we do it twice, something like that. It's probably hard to tell, but as this wall has expanded, it's pushed that trim piece. I don't know if you could see how curved that piece is. This door still operates, but it's just squeezed the door frame over like that. That's out 3/4 of an inch now, and it was right when we put it together. So it's kind of a steep learning curve being over on the dry side. When the dry side gets very wet, I think it's pretty unusual, but it did happen, and here we are. So back to the drawing board, as they say. The good news is we did trade the Toyota in, and we were able to get a pickup truck that gets the same fuel economy as the Toyota and can do more stuff. So that seemed like it was a good trade. That'll help a lot. And that we'll have time to swap the engine out in the diesel. It's got a freeze plug that's leaking on the diesel, and it drips right on a exhaust header pipe, and it kind of makes me nauseous when I'm driving it. So yep, lots to do. Hope everybody's doing well. I think the best way to keep what you have is to be thankful for what you have. And gratitude is the attitude for altitude. A plane can't fly unless its nose is up. If it's nose down, no amount of horsepower will cause it to gain altitude. When it's nose up, a positive attitude, it can gain altitude. So gratitude, looking up, being thankful, is the right attitude for altitude. Have a blessed new year.